Okay, so we have a special good morning. Good to see you all. And people are still coming in, so we're just going to let that happen as we do. Oh, and thank you, Brian, for turning on my microphone. I'm used to the headphone, but today we have given the headphone to our friend, Dr. Edie, because she is going to be giving us a very special presentation about the meaning of her trip to her pilgrimage to Ghana just a few weeks ago.
Good morning, friends. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O God, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
I'm glad that you all said good morning. I love a call and response. It's going to be one of those kind of mornings. I'm so grateful to be with you this morning and to share two stories from my recent trip to Ghana. I hope you'll find them helpful in some ways in your own lives. First, however, I need to thank Pastor Donna, who's over there somewhere, there she is, for the opportunity to speak with you today. I want to thank Brian Buckner for his assistance with the musical choices, Jim Sweeten for his technical expertise. Thank you, Jim. I also want to deeply thank my travelers on this past journey, one of whom is here with us today, Wayne Millett, Dr. Wayne Millett. And I saw a number of my fellow travelers online this morning, so they've come from all parts of the country to be with us today. Teresa Kwachi and Sheila Clark Ekong, my friends of 30 years, are so special in that this trip was put together because of our friendship over 30 years. And without their help, this would never have been either conceived or enacted. Special thanks to Teresa again, as the owner of Cross-Cultural Travel and Tours, Sister Sarah Asari and Brother Tete, our brilliant tour guides, along with the remarkable driver, Mr. Clemens. I want to say thank you to everybody who together made this trip a lifetime experience for a number of us. And a number of us have said that about this is a once in a lifetime trip. And then gratitude for my friends, the 20 of us who went as strangers mostly and ended up as family at the end of that 10 days. Particularly Na Makor, Na Shika, and Quentin Millett, who have provided many of the photographs you're about to see. Among the scriptures for today was this passage from Isaiah. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt, and you shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in. I've entitled these reflections, Ghanaians as the repairers of the breach. And I hope that these two stories will help illustrate and exemplify why I've made this title. The restorative nature of our trip and the abundance of gifts the Ghanaians we encountered gave us during that 10 days welcomed us back home. Now, first, a little bit of background. Those of you who know me know that this was not my first trip to Ghana. It was my 19th. However, two things stand out as being really different about this trip. First, I was not working officially on any project or any volunteer event. And if you want to know what those were over 30 years, I'll tell you later. Second, but most importantly, it was the first time I had the opportunity to take my grandson to Ghana. This is something I had promised when he was born 14 years ago. And I'm so grateful that I lived to see this, because some of you know that I came close to death a couple of times in this last 14 years. So I lived to see him walk in the places that his father had walked, that his aunt had walked, that I had walked, and the places that we believe our ancestor was stolen from. So that was an unimaginable gift for us. Trips to Ghana for people of African descent whose ancestors were part of the carnage of the transatlantic slave trade are always spiritual journeys, even if the travelers do not recognize how deeply they might be moved at first. The sights and sounds and lessons on any one of those trips make an impact on one's life that cannot be forgotten. So the first story I want to share with you is a story of the two slave forts, or slave castles, or slave dungeons along the Gulf of Guinea on the Atlantic Ocean in Ghana's central region. Cape Coast Castle is one that is most well known in the United States because the Smithsonian had a part in restoring it. While the skilled docents of these tours, when I took them in 1995, recognized that we needed more time as African Americans, African Caribbeans, and people from the UK. But they didn't grasp the depth of the intensity of those experiences. So they gave us time. And while the Cape Coast Castle was problematic to me, my first trip in 1995, it wasn't until I moved up the beach about 45 minutes to the Elmina Castle that everything changed for me dramatically. The Elmina Castle was originally occupied and built by the Portuguese, then occupied by the Dutch, and ultimately by the British. On my first visit to that area, as I got out of the taxi, my legs would not hold me. I collapsed on the beach with a suitcase. The taxi driver helped me up, and I could see the castle from where I was standing. Throughout my time in Elmina that first year, 1995, I felt a strong pull of having been there before. And some of you have heard me say that I learned about Ghana in 1957 as they moved into independence. And I was 8 years old, and I said to myself, I will go there someday. It took 40 years, but I got there. So I didn't understand until I walked into that dungeon, until I walked into the women's dungeon, why it was so painful. And years later, as we collected information, we learned why it was so painful, because it is a space from which my forebear left. So the docents, again, they recognized that we needed space, but I'm sure it was clear that they and other Ghanaians who were making the tours didn't understand the depth of the importance of that visit to us. The upper areas of these edifices were airy and had large windows and great views. And the officers and the soldiers who lived there and were engaged in the slave trade could enjoy those. However, the lower parts of each of those fortresses were dark, dank, airless, and crowded holes where enslaved people were kept before they were sold and shipped off across the ocean. The last experiences they had of solid ground were the door of no return, a very narrow space that one had to bend over in order to move through. I want you to close your eyes for a moment, if you will, and see this with me. There's a brightness in front of you, startling, given the weeks you have been in the dungeons. You are leaving the only home you've ever known. You will never see your family members again. You cannot refuse to go through that narrow passage carved into the rock because there is a guard on the other side of it with a gun who will kill you if you don't go with the others you are chained to and enter the hold of that awaiting ship. After 7 months of walking, you are on your way to the unknown. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, alone, away from a home, a long way from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone, a long way from home, a long way from home. Both my son, I'm going to move on because I know we'll find the other pictures, and so I'm not worry about this. Exhale, Jim. My family have all reported that Elmina felt different, that slave fort felt different from Cape Coast. And on this trip, our docent in Elmina came up to me and said, "Auntie, I remember you." I was startled. He said, "Yeah, I remember you, Auntie. You have been here before." Aha. That is my daughter at the door of no return. 1995. He said, Auntie, you've been here before. I couldn't believe that this man who takes hundreds of people through that dungeon, those dungeons, hundreds of people every year through those spaces, could actually look at me and say, "Auntie, I recognize you." And normally, when you are a person of African descent who has not come from there, does not live in Ghana all the time, the docents will let you take your time and move through the castles. So everybody else goes on your time. And I guess he had done that enough with me because I would drag my students along over 13 years. I ran a program there and drag other people along who had come to visit. But he said, "Auntie, you are welcome home again." He was different that time, 3 weeks ago. And so were so many of the other Ghanaians who led these tours. I moved to the second story. In 2019, the Ghanaian government launched an initiative they called the Year of Return. Diasporan Africans from all continents were invited back to Ghana to partake in celebrations, rituals, programs to welcome us home. Thousands of African Americans, literally, have since left the US, moved themselves and their families to Ghana, and many of them have obtained Ghanaian citizenship. It's a place that welcomes. Why, you might ask, would people do that? Because the Ghanaians we encountered by that time no longer merely recognized. And there's my grandson standing at the same door. But they empathized with many of us who have felt a long way from home. On the other side of those doors of no return are now signs denoting that they are passages of return for us across the diaspora. Rituals have been held to purify the land and offer prayers for the departed and for those of us who have now returned. This leads me to the second story. The Asin Manso Slave River Site is a place about an hour away by motor from the slave castles. It doesn't seem very far unless you're slave walking. It's the place where enslaved individuals had their last bath on African soil before they were marched those last miles to the dungeons. We learned that it was also the site of the busiest market during the transatlantic slave trade. This site was known in the area. However, most of us outsiders had not heard of it until 2015. By 2019, it had become known as the ancestral graveyard, and many visitors came there. Walking along the path to that river, this song came to me. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, see those children dressed in red. God's gonna trouble the water. They must be the children that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Walking to the area denoted the last bath allowed one to consider what it was like to have walked for months and still not know what life had for you. Your bruised body might be cleaned of the debris and stench of the journey, but your spirit could not possibly be. Fortunately, the keepers of Asin Manso had marked a place a little bit further up that river and denoted it the first bath of return. That was a place that those of us who were coming back could dip a part of our bodies into the water as a sign of returning our ancestors to their homelands. God in trouble, the water will wade in the water. Wade in the water, children wade in the water. God's on the troubled water. In the upper portion of Unseen Man's Soul are murals that the people of African descent used to write their names in 2019. We learned that the area now houses several spaces where Africans from the diaspora have sent their ashes to be interred in the grounds. I had never been to this place before, but it had a presence that one could not ignore. On the grounds of that area are 3 grave sites, and these are the images I want to share with you. As part of the year of no return, the Ghanaian government approached 3 countries and asked families in those countries about their willingness to allow one of their ancestors to be returned to Ghana for reburial. People who had been slaves. So again, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for just a moment and visualize this with me. Your family has said yes. And you find that instead of the drama that has been your place of rest for hundreds of years, your body is exhumed and is placed on a ship. And that ship, the same kind of ship that carried you away, now carries you back to African shores. And you are buried there. The first person to be returned was an African American. And you can see now, if you open your eyes, his gravesite. This happened in that year with a woman by the name of Crystal from Jamaica. Again, she had been a slave. We don't know her original name. But her family agreed that Crystal could be returned. And so Crystal's body or remains were placed on a ship and by sea carried back to Ghana, where they were interred next to the African American. And the third person was returned by ship, perhaps from the UK, and lies next to the other 2. And so if you look at that space, there are 3 sacred places, sacred burials, right next to one another. And those places help to denote all the people who are captured and sent away. The year of return was really special to a number of us and to the Ghanaian government because I think they were surprised at how many of us came back that year. I was actually there that year, but I was working. So didn't get to do any of the stuff that everybody else was doing. I'm going to close soon, but I want to talk to you about that passage from Galatians, because for me, the Ghanaians have been the repairers of the breach for so many of us of African descent. While we're being taught here and pushed to believe that slavery need not be taught in schools, the excuse that I hear all too often is that teaching makes white people feel bad. The people of Ghana have offered us options to see the places where those atrocities occurred. While efforts to erase our very existence are commonplace here in the United States, we know that there's a balm in Gilead where the streets of our hearts can be restored. We learned how important our traditions, our ethnicities, our histories have been. We have a place where we can return and remember ourselves. Our bones are strengthened there. There is water for our parched places, and ancient ruins are being rebuilt. For that, I have everlasting praise and song. God has smiled on me. God has set me free. God has smiled on me. God's been good to me. God has smiled on me. God has set me free. God has smiled on me. God's been good to me. I thank you for going along with me on this journey this morning. And I pray that I've been able to portray some of the richness of my experiences in Ghana, the repairer of the breach. It's been my home, my second home for the last 30 years. Thank you.
Hi, friends. Wow. Edie, thank you so much. We're gonna let the audio, let's just have another round of applause for Edie, please.